That night, curiosity got the better of me. I searched for the podcast on Spotify. The Most Pathetic Woman, Episode 1. Published 4 years and 11 months ago. My blood ran cold. Exactly 5 years ago, I started therapy with Dr. Margaret Chen. I pressed play. The voice belonged to Margaret, but it was different. Colder. More mocking. Hello, listeners. Welcome to the most fascinating case of my career. This woman, whom I'll call M, is a perfect example of pathological self-deception. My stomach twisted into a knot. She continued. M came to my office crying because her husband was cheating on her. What's pathetic is that she thinks he's the problem. 5 years ago. My husband David cheated on me 5 years ago. I told Margaret in my very first session. I never told anyone else. I kept listening, trembling. The funny thing is, M doesn't understand that the real problem is her. She's so insecure, so needy, that she drives men to look for something better. Nausea washed over me. I had confided in Margaret that I felt insecure after the infidelity. She told me it was completely normal, that it wasn't my fault. But in the podcast, she said the opposite. I opened episode 2. Today, M told me she forgave her husband immediately. Obviously, M has no dignity. She accepts crumbs because she believes she doesn't deserve more. The comments were even worse. This woman is an idiot. How can someone be so stupid? I'm embarrassed for her. I reviewed all the podcast information. 247 episodes published. I had attended exactly 247 sessions with Margaret. 1 every week for 5 years. Every Tuesday at 4 p.m. Every secret of mine transformed into content. When I told her about my miscarriage. Episode 83. M lost a baby, and her first reaction was to wonder if her husband would leave her. Pathetic. When I told her my sister stole $15,000 from me. Episode 120. M is so weak she can't even confront her own sister. When I confided my suicidal thoughts. Episode 192. M threatened suicide again. It's her favorite tactic to get attention. I never threatened to kill myself. I told her that sometimes I didn't want to wake up. That's completely different. But she twisted it. She turned it into something dramatic for the podcast. I checked the podcast numbers. 4.8 million subscribers. Each episode had 4 advertisements. I did the math. Margaret was earning approximately $10,000 monthly, more than $2 million annually, selling my pain. I reviewed the document I signed at my first appointment 5 years ago. I authorized the recording of sessions for therapeutic and research purposes. Research. She used that word to justify everything. I texted my sister Emily. That podcast you recommended, how long have you been listening to it? Since episode 1, she replied. Almost 5 years. It's my favorite podcast. I asked my mom the same question. Also from the beginning. 5 years. My dad. 4 years. My best friend Rachel. 3 years. Everyone had been listening to my deepest secrets without knowing it was me. Margaret changed small details. My husband's name is David. She called him Robert. I'm 34. She said 37. I work as a designer. She said accountant. Enough so nobody connected the dots. But everything else was exactly real. My actual words. My recorded crying. My exposed traumas. That night I listened to 23 episodes without sleeping. In episode 147, Margaret said something that destroyed me. Honestly, M is never going to get better, but that works in my favor. The longer she stays in therapy, the more content I have. She never wanted to help me. She wanted me sick, broken, dependent, because I was her $1 million business. The next day, I arrived at my 4:00 session as always. Margaret greeted me with her warm smile. Victoria, so good to see you. How was your week? I sat on the gray couch where I had sat 247 times. I looked at the coffee table. There was her black recorder as always, small, discreet. I pretended everything was normal. It was a difficult week. David and I had another big fight. Margaret nodded, taking notes in her notebook. Tell me more about that. While I spoke, she wrote. Now I knew the truth. Those notes were the script for her next episode. Episode 248. When the session ended, Margaret smiled. Victoria, you're making incredible progress. See you next week. I paid her the usual $200. I left her office on the 8th floor, but I didn't leave the building. I waited in my car in the parking lot. 45 minutes later, Margaret came out with a young woman, her production assistant. I followed them on foot from a distance. "Today's episode is going to be gold," Margaret said. Em finally admitted she feels completely invisible in her marriage. "Listeners are going to lose their minds over this." The assistant laughed. "We're almost at 5 million subscribers. We should make official merchandise, mugs that say I'm pathetic." They both laughed as they got into their cars. I sat in mine crying. 5 years trusting her with my darkest secrets. 5 years paying her $200 per session, $52,000 in total, for her to betray me in the worst possible way. But the worst came that night. My mom shared the new episode in our family WhatsApp group. Episode 248. The most pathetic woman admits she feels invisible. My mom wrote, "This woman keeps getting worse. How sad." My sister responded, "It's so frustrating. I would have given up on her by now." My aunt added, "She needs more than therapy. She needs a miracle." They were talking about me, mocking me, pitying the pathetic woman from the podcast, without knowing that woman ate with them every Sunday. The next day, I hired a lawyer specializing in image rights. I showed him the signed consent, the document that said research, not commercial exploitation. My lawyer smiled. "This is a clear violation of multiple laws. You have a multi-million-dollar case." Then I hired a private investigator. Find out everything about Dr. Margaret Chen. 3 days later, I received a 47-page report. Margaret Chen wasn't her real name. She was Margaret Sanders. She lost her psychology license in Texas 7 years ago for violating patient confidentiality. She was practicing illegally in California under a false identity. But there was something else in the report, something the investigator marked with yellow highlighter, something that when I read it left me paralyzed because I finally understood why Margaret chose me specifically, why out of all her patients I was the star of her $1 million podcast. Margaret and I shared something she never mentioned in 5 years of therapy, something that changed absolutely everything, because that secret connection between us was... The investigator's report said exactly this. Margaret Sanders, older sister of David Sanders. David legally changed his surname to Chen 15 years ago. Stated reason: family estrangement. I read those lines 20 times. My therapist was my husband's sister, David's sister. David never mentioned having a sister. In 10 years of marriage, never. I asked him once about his family. "My family is dead to me," he said. "I don't want to talk about it." I respected his pain. I never asked again. But his family wasn't dead. His sister was alive, sitting across from me every Tuesday, listening to my secrets, recording my pain, selling it. When I got home that night, David was watching television. "Hey, honey," he said without looking at me. "How was your therapy?" I sat across from him, turned off the television. David looked at me confused. "What's wrong?" I took out the investigator's report, placed it in his hands. "David, I need you to tell me the truth." He read the first page. His face went white. "Where did you get this?" "I hired a private investigator." David closed his eyes. "Victoria, I can explain." "Explain then why your sister has been my therapist for 5 years. Why didn't you ever tell me Margaret was your sister? Why did you let me tell her all my secrets?" David started trembling. "I didn't know at first. I swear I didn't know." "When did you find out?" 3 years ago." "How did you find out?" "Margaret called me. She told me you were her patient. She told me that if I told anyone, she would destroy my life. She's blackmailing you." David nodded with tears in his eyes. "She has information about me. Things I did before I met you. Things I could go to prison for." "What things?" David shook his head. "I can't tell you. It's too serious. Margaret said if I cooperated, she'd keep my secrets." "Cooperate? How?" David took a deep breath. "The infidelity 5 years ago. I never cheated on you, Victoria." I felt the floor disappear beneath my feet. "What did you say?" "Margaret asked me to make you believe I had cheated. She gave me a complete script. She told me exactly what to say, how to act. Why? So you would go to therapy with her. So you would have something dramatic to tell her." I refused at first. But she showed me evidence of what I did, evidence that would destroy me. I was paralyzed. Everything was a lie. 5 years built on a lie. The entire foundation of my therapy was false. And the fights? I asked. The fights we've had over the years. Some were real, but many were orchestrated by Margaret. She would send me messages telling me exactly what to fight about, what to say to hurt you, so you would have new material to bring to therapy. David was crying now without control. Victoria, I'm so sorry. I'm a coward. I should have told you from the beginning, but I was so afraid. I stood up. I need you to tell me what secret Margaret has on you. David refused. If I tell you, you'll hate me. I already hate you, David. I already hate you for letting me suffer 5 years, for letting me pay $52,000 to be betrayed, for letting me believe I was broken. He looked at me with red eyes. I killed someone 15 years ago. It was an accident. I was driving drunk. I hit a man. Margaret was with me in the car. She was a minor then. I was 20. Margaret helped me hide the body. She helped me change my name. She helped me build a new identity. And now she charges me for that favor. She charged me with you. I felt sick. My husband was a killer. My therapist was his accomplice. And I was the perfect experiment for both of them. An experiment that gave them millions of dollars. Margaret chose you specifically, I said. David nodded. When we started dating 10 years ago, I told her about you. Margaret researched everything about you. Your family, your job, your life. When I proposed to you, Margaret told me she had a plan. A plan that would make us both rich. You also make money from the podcast. David shook his head. Margaret offered me 30% of the profits. I refused the money. I didn't want to be part of it. I just wanted to protect myself from going to prison. But then Margaret changed the deal. She said that if I didn't accept the money, it meant I could betray her at any moment. She forced me to accept. She forced me to have a joint bank account with her to tie me to the crime. How much money do you have? David swallowed. 800,000. All in my name. Margaret said that if anything went wrong, I would be the only one legally responsible. She made sure she was protected. I sat down again. My marriage was fake. My therapy was fake. My pain was the only thing that was real. And it was exploited, manufactured, sold. There's something else you need to know, David said. Your sister Emily. She's also involved. What does Emily have to do with this? David took a deep breath. Emily works for Margaret. For 3 years, she's been the podcast editor. I felt like I was going to faint. My younger sister. My sister who recommended the podcast to me. My sister who listened from episode 1. She knew. Emily knew everything from the beginning. That's why she recommended it to me, I whispered. Exactly. Margaret pays her $5,000 monthly. Emily edits each episode, adds sound effects, cuts parts where Margaret accidentally says your real name. But there was something else. Emily gave Margaret additional information. Information you didn't share in therapy. What information? Things from family lunches, private conversations you had with your mom, problems at your work. Emily was Margaret's spy inside your own family. That's why the episodes felt so real. Because Margaret didn't just have your recorded sessions, she had complete surveillance of your life. I got up and walked toward the door. Where are you going? David asked. To talk to Emily. Victoria, wait. It's 11 at night. I don't care. I drove to Emily's apartment. I knocked on the door 20 times. Emily opened in pajamas with swollen eyes. Victoria, what are you doing here? I pushed the door and entered. We need to talk. Emily closed the door slowly. I know everything. She started crying immediately. Victoria, I'm so sorry. How long, Emily? How long have you known the podcast was about me? From the beginning. 5 years. When Mom showed me episode 1, I already knew it was you. Margaret had contacted me a month before. How did she contact you? She offered me a job as an audio editor. I had just lost my job. I desperately needed money. Margaret offered $5,000 a month. It was more than I made at my previous job. I accepted without asking much. But then you realized it was me. Emily nodded. When I edited the first episode, I recognized your story immediately. David's infidelity, your exact words, everything. I confronted Margaret. I told her I couldn't do this to my sister. And what did Margaret tell you? She told me that if I quit, she would tell the whole family about my drug problem. My problem that only she knew about because I was also her patient before you. You were also Margaret's patient. For 2 years before you started therapy with her, I told her terrible things. Things I did. Money I stole from the family. Drug debts. Margaret recorded everything. She threatened to publish a podcast about me too. A podcast called The Addict Sister. So you agreed to betray me to protect yourself. Emily was crying uncontrollably. Victoria, I was 23. I was scared. I thought it would only be for a few months. But 3 years passed. 3 years spying on me. 3 years giving her private information about me. 3 years editing episodes where Margaret mocked me. 3 years collecting money from my suffering. Emily knelt down. Every day I wanted to tell you. Every Sunday at family lunches, when everyone talked about the podcast, I wanted to scream the truth. I hated myself. I started using drugs again because of the guilt. I attempted suicide 6 months ago. You showed me the scars on your wrists 6 months ago. You told me you fell. I lied. I tried to cut my veins because I couldn't live with what I was doing to you. But I didn't even have the courage to die. I have no forgiveness, Victoria. I know that. I just want you to know that I love you. That I've always loved you. That destroying your trust destroyed me too. I looked at my younger sister kneeling and crying. Part of me wanted to hug her, but another larger part wanted to hit her. I need you to give me everything, I said. All the podcast files, all the emails with Margaret, all the messages, all the payments, everything. Emily stood up and opened her laptop. I'll give you everything. I have 5 terabytes of material. Unedited videos of Margaret talking about the podcast. Emails where she plans future episodes. Lists of other patients she's also exploiting. Other patients. Emily nodded. Margaret doesn't just have you. She has 3 more podcasts with 3 different women. The toxic mother, the jealous wife, the failed daughter. They're all real patients. They're all being exploited just like you. I need the names of those women. Emily wrote 3 names on paper. Natalie Brooks, Stephanie Hayes, Christina Chen. Christina Chen. Same surname as Margaret. She's her cousin. Margaret exploits her own cousin. Emily handed me an external hard drive. Here's everything. It's enough evidence to completely destroy Margaret. There's also something else in those files. What else? Recordings of Margaret admitting she never wanted to cure you. That she manipulated your diagnoses. That she invented symptoms to make the content more dramatic. That she intentionally kept you sick because you were her gold mine. Margaret said all that in recordings, in calls with me. She thought I would never betray her. But I saved everything in case one day I had the courage to give you the truth. That day arrived. I took the hard drive. Emily, I need you to testify about all of this to my lawyer. I will. I'll testify about everything. I'll go to prison if necessary. I just want Margaret to pay for what she did to all of us. She did this to us. She turned us into accomplices. She destroyed us. But not anymore. The next day I contacted the 3 women. Natalie Brooks responded first. Who are you and how did you get my number? My name is Victoria. I'm a patient of Dr. Margaret Chen. I believe you are too. There was a long silence. I need to see you in person, I said. It's urgent. We met at a coffee shop at noon. Natalie arrived nervous, looking around. You're the one from the podcast, she said as soon as she sat down. The most pathetic woman. I listened to the whole thing. I'm the toxic mother. I felt strange relief hearing it. I wasn't alone. How long have you been in therapy with Margaret? 6 years. My podcast has 302 episodes. She makes $200,000 monthly from my suffering. I told her everything. The hard drive, Emily, David, the sibling relationship between Margaret and my husband. Natalie cried. I also discovered the truth a week ago. My teenage son confessed that he recognized my voice in the podcast. He told me his school friends listened to it. They bully him, calling him the son of the toxic mother. He attempted suicide. He's hospitalized. I'm so sorry. That's why I went looking for Margaret. I went to her office without an appointment. I confronted her. She laughed in my face. She told me I signed a consent form, that I can't prove anything, that I'm a truly toxic mother if I blame others for my problems. I called Stephanie Hayes. She answered crying. I know who you are, Natalie told me. I want to join too. The three of us met that afternoon. Stephanie was 42. She was a lawyer. I've been in therapy with Margaret for 7 years. The podcast The Jealous Wife has 350 episodes. Margaret makes $220,000 monthly from my story. My husband asked for divorce last week. He said he's tired of being married to a paranoid, jealous woman. But I was never jealous before therapy. Margaret convinced me I had a disorder. She prescribed medications that made me hallucinate, that made me see things that didn't exist, messages on my husband's phone that were never there. Margaret created my illness to have content. And Christina? Natalie asked. She's Margaret's cousin. Maybe she won't want to help us. Call Christina anyway. She answered with a dull voice. I know why you're calling. Do you want to talk about Margaret? Yes. Can we meet? I can't leave the house. Margaret has me monitored. She has cameras in my home. She has access to all my accounts. She controls me completely. You can come here. The four of us went to Christina's apartment that night. It was a small place, dark, with accumulated trash. Christina was 38, but looked 60. She was extremely thin, with dirty hair, torn clothes. How long have you been like this? Stephanie asked. 8 years in therapy with Margaret. The podcast, The Failed Daughter, has 405 episodes. It's the oldest of all. Margaret makes $250,000 monthly, but I don't see any of that money. Margaret is your cousin. Why did she do this to you? Christina sat on the floor. Our parents died 10 years ago. They left an inheritance of $5 million. Half for Margaret, half for me. But I had severe depression. Margaret convinced the judge that I was incapable of managing money. She became my legal guardian. She took total control of my inheritance. She told me she would use the money for my treatment. Instead, she put me in therapy, started recording the sessions, created the podcast, kept me sick, drugged, isolated. All my money disappeared. The $5 million. Margaret stole it. Now I live in this apartment that she pays for. I eat the food she approves. I take the medications she gives me. I'm her prisoner. Why haven't you reported this? I tried. 3 years ago I went to the police. Margaret showed them documents signed by me authorizing everything. Documents I signed while drugged without understanding what they were. The system failed me. Everyone failed me. Natalie took Christina's hand. You're not alone anymore. Now we're 4. 4 women against Margaret. Stephanie pulled out her laptop. I'm a corporate lawyer, but I have contacts in criminal law. With the evidence we have, we can legally destroy Margaret. But we need more. We need Margaret to confess. How will we achieve that? I asked. Stephanie smiled. We're going to set a trap for her. All 4 of us will keep going to therapy with her as if nothing happened. We'll record each session with hidden cameras. We'll ask her specific questions that force her to admit what she does. Therapeutic abuse, financial exploitation, psychological manipulation. And when we have enough evidence, I said, we file a class action lawsuit. We expose her publicly. We destroy her reputation. We send her to prison. We reclaim our lives. The 4 of us looked at each other. 4 strangers united by the same predator. 4 victims who became hunters. Margaret chose us because she thought we were weak, vulnerable, easy to control. She was wrong. Together we were strong. And together we would destroy her. For 2 weeks, the 4 of us kept attending therapy with Margaret as if nothing had changed. Stephanie got 4 hidden cameras the size of a button. We installed them on our blouses. Each session was recorded in high-definition video. My first recorded session was a Tuesday at 4 p.m, as always. Margaret greeted me with her fake smile. Victoria, you look different today. Calmer. I sat on the gray couch. I've been thinking a lot about my life, about all the decisions I've made. Margaret took her notebook. Tell me more. I played her game perfectly. I've been thinking about the podcast my family listens to. The Most Pathetic Woman. Ah, yes, Margaret said without flinching. Your family mentions it often. Have you listened to any episodes? I listened to the whole thing. All 248 episodes. Margaret tensed. And what do you think? I think that woman's therapist is doing incredible work. She's exposing difficult truths. Margaret relaxed. Exactly. Sometimes therapists must be harsh. People need to hear uncomfortable truths, even if that means exposing their deepest secrets to the entire world. Margaret went quiet for a few seconds. Informed consent exists for a reason. Patients authorize these things, but the consent says therapeutic and research purposes. It doesn't say commercial exploitation for profit. Victoria, what are you talking about? I'm talking about the fact that I know you're the therapist from the podcast. That I'm the most pathetic woman. That you've made millions selling my pain. Margaret didn't deny anything. She just smiled. How did you find out? I hired a private investigator. I also know you're David's sister. That you orchestrated his fake infidelity. That my sister Emily works for you. That you have 3 more podcasts with 3 more women. Margaret leaned back in her chair. Impressive detective work, Victoria. So you've come to confront me? I haven't come to confront you. I've come to understand why me? Why us 4? Margaret crossed her legs. You want to know my method? My selection process? Yes. Margaret smiled with genuine pride. I chose them carefully. I look for women with 3 specific characteristics. First, deep trauma that guarantees dramatic content for years. Second, dysfunctional families who would never suspect the podcast is about someone close to them. Third, low self-esteem that keeps them dependent on therapy indefinitely. You were perfect, Victoria. Infidelity trauma that I myself created. A family that constantly judges you. Destroyed self-esteem. You were the ideal patient. And the other 3? Natalie had maternal guilt over an abortion she had as a teenager. Her conservative Catholic family would never imagine she's the toxic mother from the podcast. Stephanie came from a marriage where her husband really was cheating, but I convinced her it was her paranoia. Her family already considered her dramatic. And Christina was the easiest. She was already broken when she arrived. I just had to keep her that way. Are you admitting all this? Because you think I can't prove it? Margaret shrugged. You can have all the proof in the world. You signed a consent form. They all did. My lawyers are the best. I've handled cases like this before. I always win. Before. In Texas. When you lost your license for violating confidentiality. When you changed your name to Chen. When you fled to California to start over. Margaret tensed for the first time. You've done a lot of research. Then you know I survived that. And I'll survive this too. The system always protects therapists. You 4 don't have a chance against me. Why do you do it? Why not just practice therapy honestly? Margaret laughed. Because honest therapy pays $80 an hour. I make $850,000 a month with 4 podcasts. Why settle for less? You are products. Content. Your pain is entertainment. And entertainment sells. You don't care about destroying lives. I care about building my empire. I already have $14 million in the bank. In 2 years, I'll have 30. Then I'll retire to a private island. You'll still be pathetic. I'll be a millionaire. I stood up. Thank you for your honesty, Margaret. See you next week. I left the office touching the button on my blouse. The camera had recorded everything. That night, the 4 of us met at Stephanie's house. We played the 4 videos. Margaret confessed everything to each of us. Her selection methods. Her manipulations. Her total lack of remorse. Her purely financial motivation. Stephanie turned off her laptop. With this, we've got her. Tomorrow we go to my lawyer. We file the class action. But we also do something else. What else? Natalie asked. We create our own content. We expose Margaret publicly before the trial. We give her millions of listeners the complete truth. We turn her weapon against her. The 4 of us smiled. Margaret built an empire on our pain. Now we would use that same pain to completely destroy her. The next day, we went to the most prestigious law firm in Los Angeles. The lead attorney, Robert Martinez, reviewed all our evidence for 3 hours. The videos, Emily's files, the fraudulent contracts, the bank records. When he finished, he looked at us seriously. This is the biggest case of therapeutic abuse I've seen in 30 years of practice. We have enough evidence to destroy Margaret Sanders in court. How much can we recover? Stephanie asked. Robert made calculations on his computer. Margaret earned approximately $8,700,000 with the 4 podcasts over these years. We can sue for triple in punitive damages. $26 million divided among you 4. Plus, nullification of all contracts. Plus permanent revocation of any therapeutic license. Plus criminal charges for fraud, illegal practice of medicine, and abuse of position of trust. Margaret goes to prison. How long will it take us to win? Natalie asked. With this evidence, 6 months maximum. But I suggest we do something before the trial. What? Public exposure. If we wait for the trial, Margaret will have time to hide money, create alibis, manipulate witnesses. But if we expose her now, public opinion will destroy her before she can defend herself. How do we expose her? I asked. Stephanie smiled. Victoria creates her own podcast, tells the whole truth, publishes the videos of Margaret confessing. The media will explode with this. In 48 hours, Margaret will be the most hated person on the internet. Robert nodded. It's risky but effective. Margaret could sue us for defamation. Not if everything they say is verifiable truth. And it is. We accepted the plan. That afternoon, we filed the class action lawsuit. 4 women against Margaret Sanders for $26 million plus criminal charges. The document had 187 pages of evidence. 2 hours later, Margaret called my cell phone. Victoria, we need to talk now. We have nothing to talk about. My lawyer will communicate with you. You made a grave mistake suing me. A mistake you're going to regret. I hung up. Margaret called Natalie, then Stephanie, then Christina. She threatened all of them. That night, we decided to go together to one final session with Margaret. All 4 of us at the same time. We wanted to see her face reality for what she had done. We arrived at her office without an appointment at 7 in the evening. The door was closed, but there was light inside. We knocked. Margaret opened with a distorted expression. What are you 4 doing here? We came to say goodbye. Margaret laughed bitterly. Say goodbye. You think you've won? You think with your videos and your lawsuit you're going to destroy me? Come in. I want to show you something. The 4 of us entered the office. Margaret locked the door. She turned on her computer. I'm going to show you my plan B. On the screen appeared a legal document. Declaration signed by certified medical experts, certifying that all 4 suffer from borderline personality disorder, delusional paranoid disorder, and mythomania tendencies. What is this? Stephanie asked. My legal defense. I have psychiatrists willing to testify that you 4 are mentally unstable patients who fabricated this conspiracy out of resentment toward your therapist, that the videos were edited, that the confessions were taken out of context, that everything is the product of your sick minds. No one is going to believe you. Margaret smiled. The system always believes doctors over patients, especially when the patients have documented psychiatric histories spanning years, histories that I myself created. Every false diagnosis, every unnecessary medication, every manipulated clinical note, everything builds the perfect profile of non-credible women. Natalie started crying. You prepared us from the beginning. Obviously. I'm careful. I'm intelligent. That's why I've survived these years. That's why I'll survive your pathetic attempts to destroy me. But there's something you didn't calculate, I said. What? That the 4 of us together are stronger than you. That we have resources you don't have. That the world has changed. People no longer blindly trust doctors. People believe in evidence, in videos, in recorded confessions. Margaret approached me. Naive Victoria, still as pathetic as day 1. Want to know a secret? Part of me wants you to win. Part of me wants to see what happens when you expose everything. Because honestly, I'm already bored with this game. 14 million is enough. I can retire tomorrow. You're going to spend years in court. Years rebuilding your lives. Years carrying the public trauma. While I'll be on a beach drinking mojitos. But you're not going to win, Christina said with a trembling voice. I'll go to prison for 3 years maximum. I'll get out with good behavior in 18 months. I'm still a millionaire. You're still victims forever. Nobody's going to hire you. Nobody's going to completely believe you. There will always be doubt. Margaret the bad therapist versus 4 crazy patients. Guess who wins in the court of public opinion? The four of us looked at each other. Margaret was right about something. This would follow us forever. But at least we would have justice. At least other women would know the truth. At least Margaret could never do this again. We left the office in silence. Outside, Stephanie spoke first. She thinks she's already won. But we have something she never had. What? The truth on our side. That night we created the podcast. We called it The Truth Behind the Most Pathetic Woman. We recorded the first episode at Stephanie's house. I spoke first. My name is Victoria Chen. For 5 years I was a patient of Dr. Margaret Sanders. For 5 years she recorded my therapy sessions without my real knowledge. For 5 years she sold my pain as entertainment. I am the most pathetic woman. And this is my truth. Natalie spoke next. I am the toxic mother. My son attempted suicide because of the bullying he suffered thanks to the podcast. Margaret Sanders destroyed my family for money. Stephanie continued. I am the jealous wife. Margaret drugged me with medications that made me hallucinate. She created my illness to have content. She ruined my marriage. Christina spoke last with a broken voice. I am the failed daughter. Margaret is my cousin. She stole $5 million of inheritance from me. She kept me prisoner for 8 years. She almost killed me. The four of us said in unison, Margaret Sanders is a predator. And these are our proofs. We published the video of Margaret confessing everything. Her selection methods. Her financial motivation. Her lack of remorse. 43 minutes of irrefutable evidence. We uploaded the podcast to all platforms at 11 at night on Friday. By 6 in the morning Saturday, we had 1 million downloads. By noon, we had 5 million. By midnight, we had 10 million. The media exploded. CNN called first. We want an exclusive interview with all four. We accepted. The interview was broadcast Sunday in prime time. 23 million people watched us tell our stories. They saw Margaret's videos. They saw our evidence. Monday morning, the platform started acting. Spotify removed all 4 of Margaret's podcasts. Apple Podcasts did the same. YouTube deleted her entire channel. Google removed all episodes from searches. In 24 hours, Margaret's empire disappeared from the internet. But people had already downloaded thousands of episodes. They re-uploaded them everywhere. They analyzed every word. They compared our real stories with Margaret's manipulated versions. The comments overwhelmingly supported us. This is the most disturbing story I've ever heard. Those poor women. Margaret Sanders deserves life in prison. I'm going to check on my therapist right now. How do we know they're really helping us? But there were also negative comments. This is too convenient. 4 women with mental problems attacking their doctor. They probably just want money. The videos could have been edited. We need to hear Margaret's side. Margaret gave her first public statement Tuesday. She appeared on the most watched television program in the country. She wore a formal suit, perfect hair, serious expression. These 4 women suffer from serious disorders that I tried to treat professionally for years. When I discharged them for lack of progress, they created this elaborate conspiracy to destroy me. The videos are edited. My words were taken out of context. I never admitted to doing anything illegal. The host asked her, "But you did record the sessions and create podcasts without clear consent from your patients?" Margaret responded coldly. They all signed documents authorizing recordings for research. The podcasts are research on human behavior. It's completely legal, the host insisted. But you made millions of dollars. Isn't that exploitation? The funds were used to continue the research, to improve treatments, to help future patients. Margaret manipulated the interview perfectly. Part of the public believed her, but the majority saw through her lies. Wednesday, 53 of Margaret's former patients came forward publicly, all with similar stories, all exploited, all manipulated. The pattern was undeniable. Margaret was a serial predator. Thursday, the California Medical Board announced a formal investigation. Friday, the district attorney filed criminal charges. Fraud, illegal practice of medicine, abuse of vulnerable patients, identity theft for using a fake license. Margaret was arrested Saturday morning. They led her away in handcuffs in front of television cameras. Her face no longer showed arrogance. It showed fear. In 1 week, we went from being the pathetic women to being the brave women who exposed a monster. Our podcast reached 50 million downloads. We received thousands of messages of support, women sharing their own stories of therapeutic abuse. Men, too. The movement grew beyond us four. It became a national call to better regulate the therapeutic profession, to protect vulnerable patients, to severely punish those who exploit sacred trust. Margaret had built an empire on our suffering. We built a movement on our truth, and the truth always wins. The trial began 3 months later. The courtroom was full of journalists, cameras, curious onlookers. Margaret entered in handcuffs wearing a gray suit. Her hair was pulled back. Her expression was cold. The four of us sat together in the first row. Natalie squeezed my hand. Stephanie reviewed documents. Christina trembled visibly. Judge William Foster entered. Everyone rose. This is the case of the state of California versus Margaret Sanders. Charges of fraud, illegal practice of medicine, violation of confidentiality, abuse of vulnerable patients, and identity theft. How does the defendant plead? Margaret's lawyer stood. Not guilty on all charges, Your Honor. Our lawyer, Robert Martinez, presented the case. Margaret Sanders systematically exploited 4 vulnerable women for years. She recorded them without real consent. She sold their stories as entertainment. She made millions of dollars. She destroyed lives. And she did it all while practicing illegally under a false license. Margaret's lawyer, Marcus Williams, presented his defense. My client is a legitimate researcher. The 4 plaintiffs signed clear consent forms authorizing recordings. The podcasts are academic research on human behavior. Everything was legal. Robert called his first witness. I took the stand. I was sworn in. Ms. Chen, when did you sign the document authorizing recordings? At my first session 5 years ago. Margaret gave it to me with 10 other documents. I signed them without reading carefully. I was crying. I had just discovered that my husband had supposedly cheated on me. The document mentioned that recordings would be for research? Yes. Did you understand research to mean million-dollar commercial exploitation? I understood research as confidential academic studies. I never imagined my sessions would be sold publicly. Williams cross-examined me afterward. Ms. Chen, you suffer from several documented mental disorders. Is it possible that your interpretation of events is distorted by your condition? Robert objected immediately. Your Honor, those diagnoses were fabricated by the defendant. The judge sustained the objection. Continue with another line of questioning, Mr. Williams. Williams insisted. Ms. Chen, isn't it true that you're resentful because therapy didn't work? That you're blaming my client for your own failures? No. I'm here because Margaret exploited me, lied to me, intentionally kept me sick because I was her business. I stepped down from the stand. Natalie testified next. Then Stephanie. Then Christina. All 3 told similar stories. Manipulation. Exploitation. Systematic abuse. Robert presented the videos of Margaret confessing. The jury watched them completely. 43 minutes of Margaret admitting her methods, her financial motivations, her contempt for us. Williams tried to argue the videos were edited. Robert presented the original unedited files. They were identical. Then Robert called a financial expert. Dr. Richardson, how much did Margaret Sanders earn from the 4 podcasts? Approximately $8,700,000 over 5 years. That's not counting income from merchandise, sponsorships, and public appearances. The real total exceeds $10 million. The jury murmured in shock. Robert continued. Margaret Sanders built a $1 million empire on the suffering of 4 vulnerable women. It wasn't research. It was pure exploitation. Robert called final witnesses. 53 former patients of Margaret. All with stories of manipulation. All exploited in different ways. The pattern was undeniable. Margaret was a serial predator. The trial lasted 3 weeks. The jury deliberations took only 4 hours. The verdict came on a Friday afternoon. The judge read, in the case of the state of California versus Margaret Sanders, Count 1, fraud, guilty. Count 2, illegal practice of medicine, guilty. Count 3, violation of confidentiality, guilty. Count 4, abuse of vulnerable patients, guilty. Count 5, identity theft, guilty. Margaret showed no emotion. She simply stared straight ahead. The The judge continued. Margaret Sanders, you abused your position of trust in the vilest manner. You exploited vulnerable women for personal gain. You showed zero remorse. For these crimes, I sentence you to 12 years in prison without possibility of parole before 8 years. Additionally, you must pay $12 million in restitution divided equally among the 4 victims. $3 million for each. Your license to practice any form of therapy is permanently revoked in all states. The 4 of us hugged, crying. Justice, finally. Margaret was escorted out of the courtroom. As she passed by us, she looked directly at me. She whispered something only I heard. You're still pathetic. But I no longer cared about her opinion. I had won. 1 year after the trial, my life was completely different. I used the $3 million in restitution for something meaningful. I opened a support center for victims of therapeutic abuse. It's called Recovered Voices. It's in downtown Los Angeles. It has 10 legitimate therapists, exhaustively verified. It offers free therapy to victims of professional abuse. It also offers legal counseling, support groups, and an anonymous reporting program to report suspicious therapists. Emily works with me. She's the program coordinator. At first, I hesitated to hire her, but she has worked tirelessly on her redemption. She attends therapy 3 times a week. She's been sober for 14 months. She dedicates every day to helping other victims. Our relationship isn't what it was before. Maybe it never will be, but we're rebuilding something new, something based on brutal honesty. Natalie also works at the center. She runs the support groups for mothers. Her son left the psychiatric hospital 8 months ago. He's improving slowly. Natalie says our center saved her life. It gave her purpose after the destruction. Stephanie went back to practicing law, but now she specializes in therapeutic abuse cases. She's won 17 cases in 1 year. She's freed 17 victims. She's becoming nationally famous. Christina's recovery was the slowest. She spent 6 months in intensive rehabilitation, detoxifying from years of unnecessary medications, regaining weight, healing. Now she lives in her own apartment. She works part-time at a bookstore. She attends meetings at the center twice a week. She's alive. She's free. That's enough for now. David and I divorced. It was amicable. He testified against Margaret at the trial. He confessed everything about the murder 15 years ago. He received a reduced sentence for cooperation, 5 years in prison. He gets out in 3 with good behavior. We talk once a month. He's in therapy too, working on his guilt, his cowardice. He says when he gets out he wants to be different, better. I believe him, but we'll never be together again. That chapter is closed. With my family, things improved gradually. It took 8 months before I could have dinner with my mom without crying. It took a year before I could be in the same room as my dad without feeling rage. My Aunt Linda wrote me a 50-page letter apologizing. I read it completely. I responded with 5 words. I forgive you, but I need time. We're rebuilding. Slow. Painful. But real. I found a new therapist. Her name is Dr. Sarah Mitchell. I verified her license 5 times. I investigated her background completely. I make her sign documents each session confirming confidentiality. She understands my paranoia. She respects it. She's actually helping me. No hidden agenda. No recordings. Just genuine healing. My podcast, The Truth Behind the Most Pathetic Woman, now has 120 million downloads. It became a national movement. It inspired legislative changes. 30 states have already approved stricter laws to regulate therapists. Margaret is still in prison. She has 7 years left. I heard she works in the library, that she keeps a low profile, that other inmates hate her for what she did. I've never visited her. I never will. Last night I received a message from a listener. It said, "Thank you for being brave. Thank you for exposing Margaret. Thank you for creating this movement. Because my therapist is also recording me. She's also creating content with my sessions. I found her podcast by accident. And now I know what to do. I'm going to report her. I'm going to fight like you fought. I'm not alone thanks to you." I read the message 3 times. I cried. But they were different tears. Tears of purpose, of meaning, of transformation. My pain wasn't in vain. My public exposure helped thousands. My vulnerability became strength. Margaret wanted to destroy me by calling me pathetic. She wanted to turn my pain into her empire, but I turned that same pain into my purpose, into my mission, into my victory. I looked out the window of my office at Recovered Voices. I saw Emily leading a support group. I saw Natalie hugging a new mother who had just arrived. I saw Christina organizing files with a shy smile. I saw Stephanie walking in with another new client. I smiled. Margaret was right about one thing. I was the most pathetic woman, but not anymore. Now I'm the woman who survived, the woman who fought, the woman who won, the woman who turned her worst nightmare into her greatest victory. I'm no longer a victim. I'm a survivor, and that changes everything.